And hello, welcome everyone. My name is Phil Anthony. I'm with ICC as a Digital Codes Premium Solution Specialist, and I do these monthly webinars on digital codes. Usually it's just an overview of the features and how you can use it to achieve your objectives with code and standards research. However, today we are going to focus on one of our premium tools. We keep adding in more tools. So if you already have a subscription or you're considering one, as we bring in more tools like this Revit add-in, we continue to do updates on it, and that's what we'll concentrate here and give you some information and other items. If you're familiar, seeing the AI Navigator, which we have started, getting a lot of feedback on. So your license to Digital Codes Premium subscriptions continue to get more valuable as we add more features, content, and titles to it. And I will be in the background here. I'm going to let Eric Stover introduce himself in just a minute, but if you have questions during the presentation, please post them in chat. If it's something real pertinent, I'll interrupt Eric to ask the question there so he can address it while it's still on his screen. If you have questions about digital codes, the software itself, feel free to post those in the chat. I will monitor those and answer those as I'm able to. And at the end, if everyone's done asking questions via the chat room, we'll open up offer the opportunity to raise your hand. We'll open up the mic to ask questions after. So I will turn it over here. I'll be monitoring the chat and posting messages. And Eric, you are on.
Great. Thank you so much, Phil. I appreciate you and everybody else's time today. So thanks for having me. I guess I'll reiterate what Phil said, that as I go through this presentation and the demo, if there's anything that comes up that you have an immediate question about what I'm saying or clarification, feel free to ping Phil and we'll have a dialogue right then and there. So just want to reiterate that. So a little bit about me. Eric Stover, nice to meet everybody virtually. I have been contracting with the ICC since the spring of 2022. I'm based out in Northern California, and I was brought on board to start developing a footprint for how we bring in the codes work into a variety of different CAD applications, starting with Revit. I have 30 years of experience developing software in the AEC industry. I spent a majority of that at Autodesk. And my goal here is to synthesize a vision, articulate a roadmap, and then build it for ICC. And I'm happy to connect with everybody here. If I'm happy to share what I know, my experiences, also listen to your ideas. You can connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. Happy to do that. But today I want to talk a little bit about our Digital Codes Premium Revit add-in. So we launched this back in November of 2022. And we've been updating it periodically. Probably, I would say our cadence has been, our second release was out 6 months after that. Then our third one was out in February. We're looking to keep these updates going at a quarterly clip from here on out. So my goal today is to show you a little bit of what we delivered in our third update, and then also talk about the roadmap and where we're going next, and what you'll see actually in a few weeks from us. So in terms of like our vision or our North Star for what we're building here for the BIM or CAD space, so this is it. So for building professionals like yourselves who want to create a safe and sound structure for your clients, the ICC Digital Codes Premium Revit add-in is a digital tool that enables the architect, structural, MEP, and fire protection engineer to validate construction plans with published applicable building codes during the design process itself. So as we think about what we're going to build here, and as we continue to build out this add-in and more, this is kind of what our leading principle looks like. Does it abide by this? If so, this is kind of the direction that we are headed. And so the Revit application today, if you want to go get the add-in, it's free. So you can download it. We have it available in a variety of locations, but I'll get to those in a second. But it's a free application that you install on top of Revit, and it allows you to work directly within a building code. And Phil mentioned this at the beginning, but I will also talk about subscription benefits probably throughout the presentation. But just remember, at the very least, you can always interact with all of the iCodes for free with this tool, because those are freely available. So you can actually use this tool even if you aren't currently a subscriber. But the Revit add-in also integrates with all the premium features and content. So when you're a subscriber to that service, we integrate nicely there as well. So you get the best of both worlds. So just a little bit about the premium service itself. So premium is a for-fee service offering an ever-growing list of features and improvements delivered on top of a growing inventory of titles, all curated by the ICC. And you can subscribe for a month, a year, even 3 years to a title or a bundle of titles, which also comes with a set of collaboration features to help you navigate, document, print, and share all that content. And as you can see here on the screen, there's some sample pricing here, but your mileage may vary depending on the content you're interested in. And then lastly, I'll call out the Premium Complete offering on the bottom right, which provides access to the entire inventory of content, essentially everything in the library for, again, a monthly, annual, or 3-year subscription. So again, this is the world of which the Revit add-in plays and plugs into. So what's available now? So we, again, launched our third update in late February. Just to get ahead of myself, I'll say that our next update is coming at the end of April, end of this month. So stay tuned for that. You can get the add-in in the following 2 locations. You can either go to our own ICC Revit add-in download page, mouthful, located at that URL, or you can go to the Autodesk App Store. And if you go to the Revit page, you can go ahead and download it there as well. Same exact build. Today we support Revit 2022 through 2024. We are looking to support Revit 2025, probably, I would say, by the end of May. We're currently starting our testing on that. And I had a few questions in the last webinar about Revit LT. So currently no Revit LT support, but we'll get to that at the end of our roadmap discussion here. And if you have any feedback, or you want to inform the roadmap, or just want to talk or be a part of our customer council, you can email us at the following email address, icc.revit.team@gmail.com. And as I mentioned, Revit or version update 4 is available at the end of April, and Revit 2025 is supported thereafter. So let's take a quick look at what we've got today. Let me get over to my copy of Revit. And sorry, my GE Forces wants to update during the webinar. Let's not do that. So here's Revit. And in order to find our application once it's installed, if you go to the add-ins menu, you'll see the International Code Council app located here. And so the first thing you can do is you can click on a login, and I'll bring up the dialog box here. And so I'm already logged in. So your credentials, if you already have a login with the ICC and you're already a premium subscriber, it's the same exact login. So we are respectful of anything you've already purchased, and it'll all integrate well within inside of Revit. So again, same login for both if you're using the web page or if you're working inside of Revit. So just taking a quick look at the first thing you're going to see is that at the very top, we have a feed for all the latest and greatest inside of the premium offering. So you see things like compliance calculators, Phil mentioned AI Navigator, and a bunch of other things. So this is kind of the banner ad at the top, acknowledging kind of what's new that you can go and test drive if you are a subscriber. And if I scroll down, you see getting started. This is just kind of content and tools for getting up and running with a product and service. So again, my premium library. So this is where you access your content. There's a quick link for advanced search. So if you're searching for some specific content or text within content, you can go here. You can favorite your favorite titles and go back to them in this location. We have onboarding videos. We have a quick start guide, webinars, and events which you're attending right now. So these are all quick links to get you started. And if I scroll down further, my favorites. So if you favorited any titles, you would see those here. And again, in terms of quick access. And here's a list of all the titles in the library. So again, I've got, as a subscriber, I'm premium staff member, so I see all 2,000 titles here. But again, your mileage will vary based on what you're subscribed to. And at the very least, all the I-codes are available for free. So you'd see that listing here as well, excuse me. So I can scroll down here, and you can, again, I can navigate the library, and I can just do, scroll as I please. And then finally, there's concurrent access. And what this feature is if you've got a subscription, a premium subscription, you are able to share that subscription with somebody else by creating an access code, which they can then use and access the same materials that you're subscribing to. So it's kind of like buy one, get a second for free by virtue of this. So it's an enabler. Again, it lets work groups, it provides work groups functionality so that you can buy a license and then share it with a few others in your team. Again, all for one premium price point. Okay, so let me scroll up to, let's look at our titles here. And let me just say, go to my premium library, look at recommended, and I'm going to go to the 2021 International Building Code. So again, within Revit, what you're going to see is, again, you can navigate any of the particular titles that you have, again, a subscription to, or again, in the case of the iCodes, they're all free. And so in this experience, again, this is a modal dialog box. You can move it to a secondary screen if you've got one. But the idea is that you can actually navigate content while you're working inside of Revit. So like any other sort of content browser, on the left-hand side, you can see chapter information, and you're able to kind of drill down into the sections and bring those things up and read content and scroll content as you see fit. There's also a feature where, in this particular case for the 2021 IBC, I can actually pick a different version. So we actually have versions of previous versions of revision histories of previous 2021 IBCs listed here that you can get to. And then if I kind of scroll around, if I look at a particular piece of content, one of the features about with a premium subscription is that if I click on this rollout, I'm able to do things like highlight text, bookmark it for future reference. I can share this text with others. I can even print it out. And I'll get to an example of this in a second once I get through this. So let me close this back out. So going back out to our menu, if I click on, that's codes library. So if I click on project info, so this is new as of this release. What we've got here is the beginnings of how we start to serve the most appropriate content to you in the context of what you're doing in Revit. And so today, as you saw me kind of going through the codes library, just picking and choosing and looking at things and having to search for content, we want to get to a point where we can say, okay, we know what you're doing and where you're working, and so here's the most relevant content for what you're working on at this moment in time. And so for us to do that, we need some basic project information. So in here, this is just probably, you've seen this before in many other project management utilities or tools you might have. So if I just type in, what the project name is, that in, a site location, I'll say this is in Orlando, Florida. And the type of project, I'll say it's a mixed use, and jurisdiction is Orange County. And then description goes here, I'll just type that. But then here's where you can select the most appropriate building code for this particular project. So we have a list where you can scroll, or you can actually start to type ahead, and we'll bring in the most appropriate code. So like if I wanted for mechanical, type in Florida, it starts with, shows me anything with the letters FL in it. I'll click on that. Electrical code, fire code. So you get the idea that you can kind of go through this list and select a bunch of codes. And I'm just going to for the sake of speed, kind of randomly pick some things here just to show you how this works. But then once I save this information, it's written to the Revit file. And again, in the next release, it's going to be pushed up to our servers where we can start to do a lot more feature functionality as what I've described about, again, serving the right content up. Now that we know what you're working on and what the building codes are that are applicable to this project. And so what you see here is this, once you've done that, you get a note from our app saying that an updated building code summary table is now available in the schedules quantity section of the Revit project browser. So that's a mouthful. So let me say okay to that. And let me go back to my schedules. So on the Revit project browser, I'll click where it says none. And then you'll see this new schedule, building code summary. And I can go ahead and drag that into a cover page. And of course, as you can imagine, it highlights all the codes that you've put into our project information. And so the key is that this will always stay up to date with whatever you change or add in the project information dialog box. So let me go back to add-ins and let's get out of that. So let's just say that here, I want to make a change or an addition, a fire code, And I know it's Florida, but I'll say the New York City Fire Code for fun. Save that, say okay, and then you can see where it's been added to my schedule. So again, there's a one-to-one relationship between the project information and things like this building code summary table, so that whenever there's a change, this thing will automatically and always get updated. And so I think that what you're going to see from us in a couple of weeks is then with this information now on our servers, we're going to be able to do things like auto favorite these titles for you, do project tags around them and other things. So I certainly should do another webinar here a month from now to kind of go through all that extra stuff that's coming that's related to why you'd want to put this basic project information inside of this file. So let me go scroll back out. So going back to the codes library, let me type in, let's see, just for example, plumbing, or maybe I'll just say toilet. And let's see, first search for contents containing the toilet, and let's go to here, scroll down. So what I want to show next is the idea that you can look at any sort of information inside the code libraries. And let me just, for the sake of example, jump to this section in the IBC. And you're able to, as you're doing your documentation, you're able to copy and paste this information onto any particular sheet in Revit. So in this case, just for the sake of example, I'm going to highlight this text, right-click copy. I have my restroom detail open. And so what I can do here is go ahead and start an annotation in Revit, and then go ahead and just paste it in. So you can scroll in and you can actually see where the text is shown. So the idea here behind this feature is that we want to give everybody the ability to actually start to detail and document right from the code itself in your documentation. So again, you can go back to any sort of text you see and in any of the documents that you've got subscriptions to, or again, in the case of the iCodes, it's free. You can copy and paste this into your Revit documentation. Okay, so the other things I want to call out too while I'm still here is that one of the features of this, what we've got here on the web is that you can actually, create a note around this. So, and I'll just say bathroom notes, and I will save that. And you can see that I've got a note assigned to this text at section E105.1, as well as if I want to bookmark this section for future reference, I can do that too. So I'll just say bookmark example, save that. And again, as I mentioned at the beginning of this, I can also click on share, and from within this dialog box, I can email, again, all within the context of being in Revit. I can share this link with any peer of mine as needed. So again, as I'm documenting notes and bookmarks as I'm going through the codes, at any point in time, if I go to menu under premium tools, I can look at my notes and bookmarks. And you can see where I've got a listing of everything I've been writing about and documenting on the codes itself. And so what's really interesting here is that as I'm kind of documenting what's interesting to me or interesting to my team on a project, I can also select these notes and create a PDF file and then send that off or save that as needed. So again, I've got a quick list of everything that's important to me on this project. Again, all within, let me close out, all within the context of Revit. And that is a good segue towards what's next. So that's a bit of what is available today on our site from our third update. But let's take a look at kind of what we're doing, again, coming soon. I say like by the end of April for what you're about to see here. So I already mentioned the project information work. And so again, the key for us is that we are, again, as we know what codes are associated with your project, we can start to, again, serve up content and really enhance the experience that you're having within Revit. And one of those simplest things we can do, and I think I mentioned this, is that the moment you type all this stuff in, we can, again, auto favorite those titles on the cloud side. We can create project tags based upon the project name. And then again, you can associate content that you're copying and pasting into Revit, notes you're making, all within the context of that project tag. But again, these are simple things we can do to kind of just make it easier to get to the content that you want to utilize on a project per project basis. And as I mentioned before too, is that all of this information is saved with the Revit file. So the moment you close this Revit project file down and you open up another Revit file to work on, again, that will have its own context in terms of what project is associated with, what content and building codes are also associated with that as well. So it's really based on each RVT file. And so again, as other people are working on those RVT files, they'll get the same exact experience. They'll know what codes are associated with that particular Revit file. And again, they'll have the same experience, as I mentioned.
I think you just addressed one of the questions, and if I mess this up, looks like Howard asked me again, but so it stays in the Revit file even if a user logs out and then the next user opens up the Revit file?
That's correct. So what we've done is we've got there'll be a text file or a CSV file somewhere next to that Revit file that the Revit file knows of. So yes, it's in context with the RVT file, so that if anybody signs into that Revit file and starts working on it, they'll see the exact same information. All the links will be preserved, and all the building codes will be again relevant to whatever you put in will be relevant to that Revit file.
How does that info saved in Revit? New parameters created to host the new info?
No, so what we've done is we actually created a text file that sits outside of Revit. So we don't we put a little marker in Revit to know that this text file exists, but we're not utilizing any sort of the Revit objects at this particular time. Because what we were thinking here is that this is really kind of a step towards actually moving this information to the cloud, which is what you're going to start to see from us in the next couple of months, and host it there. And then that way the Revit file knows, that little marker we put in Revit will know that, oh, go to this cloud server. This is where all the information is stored, versus it's a text file, which again, it's a little old school, but it's very effective. And again, we don't mess with the Revit file and by adding lots of things to it. It's really just, hey, when you open this Revit file, click it over here is a text file with this information. But again, as I mentioned, that will change to a cloud service certainly in the next couple of months.
Two more quick questions. How will users know when version 4 is available?
That's a great question. Let me hold on that. I've got a slide coming up that I'll acknowledge on when that.
Right. And the other one too, and actually I could use some clarification to make sure. Do you need, first of all, let me start, two-part question. Do you need a license to be able to a DCP license to be able to download and use the Revit add-in?
You do not.
Okay. And then so the subscription that they need to the iCodes, and you touched on this. I mean, everyone knows you can view the iCodes at with no license. You don't have the digital codes premium. When we say premium, we're talking about features like copy, paste, make notes, and everything within the digital codes premium side of it. I guess, Eric, go ahead and explain if they only have a, I guess you just clarified you don't need to have a DCP license to use this add-in, but what content is available if they do not have a DCP license for both the free iCodes? I mean, if they have a license, then they're paying for it. But kind of, where I'm going. Explain that.
Yeah, I know what you're going with. So here's how I would explain it. So the Revit add-in, as I mentioned, is free. You can download it and utilize it as much and as often as you want on any version of Revit on any number of machines. Within that context, so if you have no subscription to any of the ICC content today, what you can do is when you boot up Revit, you have access to the entire iCodes library, the international codes, right? You can view all that content within Revit. You can even favorite that content. But what you cannot do is what the premium subscription offers you, which is what Phil just mentioned, that the ability to write notes, bookmarks, share it, write PDFs. All that feature functionality is under a premium subscription. So if you have any premium subscription, you get all that feature functionality and you get a license to whatever else, additional content that you may have purchased. But the basic version of Revit for free gets you a view of all the iCodes, and that's where it stops.
All right. Final question, I'll let you continue on, but you were talking about the text file, and where is that exactly stored when the ones associated with the ICC add-in?
I'd have to get back. If you want to email me, I'll present my address at the bottom. I'll have to get back to you. I have to ask my developer where that's stored. I don't have an exact location. It might be under the add-ins subdirectory under program files, but that's I'd be guessing. So again, you can email me at the end of this presentation and I'll let you know.
Someone asked about the state codes. Those are the same as I codes. They are viewable without a license, but not, you need a license for the DCP features. I'll leave it alone for now. A little bit there, Eric. Go ahead.
All right, no, appreciate it. And again, just jump in if there are other questions. Happy to have a conversation while we're doing this. So again, as I mentioned before, that with the next release, and what you're looking at here is the next user interface that you'll see at the end of April versus what I just showed you. And so we'll have a specific codes library feature that, again, will centralize everything. It'll only look at the books, and it'll be very focused on kind of how you navigate the literature and what you can do with the literature. And to answer your question that you had, Phil, before, is that starting with this last release, if there's an update available in that about box, you'll see a little red circle on it, and it'll tell you that there's an update available. And so when you see that, we're all programmed, and when we see red dots to click on things, that's where you go, and we'll take you to the download page, and we will actually overwrite the add-in as it is today. So you can uninstall it if you want, but you don't necessarily need to. We'll just keep overwriting as we build this thing out. And then I guess lastly here, I want to just call out that one of the things that we are trying to get ahead of is that as I look at all the research from the ICC about kind of how people navigate the codes today, I think one of the biggest things is that it's just challenging to understand what the intent of the code is, or am I looking at the right code at any particular time? And so one of the things that you're going to see from us here is really throttling up how we help and support folks who are using the app. So like Phil had mentioned at the top of the hour, we've got self-help with AI Navigator. So this is a tool, and you can look at it today. It's under beta. If you want to go to the website, you can see it there, and you can experiment with it. But the idea is that, again, given all the building codes that we've got and all the content we have, we've kind of layered this engine on this chatbot on top of it. And we've been training this chatbot to get better and better over time. Because again, you're only as good as kind of the questions you're asking, but these AI engines can be made a lot better by virtue of how we say, this is right, this is wrong. And over time, the engine actually gets really good. And you'll see this outside of ICC and other avenues of your life as well when you're dealing with chatbots. So we have one that's in beta, and you're going to have a direct access to it within Revit as well. And one of the things we're exploring is I'm thinking I'm going to bring in the entire Revit help library from all of the previous versions and bring that in here too, so that you can not only ask questions about the code, but you can ask questions about Revit itself and get, again, answers that way. So stay tuned on that, but that seems like something or a place where I want to go. We have this Q&A section where we have these things called premium answers, which is where if you're a member, you can submit questions about the code to get interpretations, and we have a large staff of folks who will examine that, evaluate it, and write and document, answers or interpretations and get those posted to the web. And so you've got an ever-growing library of questions and answers based upon, again, real-world use, real-world interpretations that, again, there's a click away. And we have an ever-growing product help section. So again, we'll be documenting how these features all work. There's a live chat. So on the side of the screen, you see on every part of the menu of Revit, there's a live chat access where you can click on somebody and actually talk to a human being if you want. And lastly, there's a section where you can get helpful videos and webinars on YouTube. Again, just to kind of help you understand and help you really kind of interpret all these various codes and what they mean for your projects is really kind of one of the main goals here for both the website and so what we're doing in Revit. So let me talk a little bit about where we go from here. So what I just described are things and technologies you're going to see in the next 2 weeks. So let's talk about what happens after we get in the month of May and we build this thing out. So if you spent any time in the world of building information modeling, you've probably seen many dialog boxes or screens that look like this about kind of how something gets developed all the way through end of life. So there's all kinds of various stages of how you develop a building. And so, what we think about is like, okay, so where you see the ICC icons, it's like, okay, so where do we think we can really help you get your job done better, faster, smarter, again, in terms of how you interpret and find the right building codes. So the features that we think about, the way we organize inside the company is we say, okay, so whether it's design development, analysis, construction documentation, or even renovation, just starting with those, what do we think we can do to really expedite the work so that you can get on with your lives and get going outside of, doing whatever discovery you need to do with the codes. So this is where our current focuses are with the work that we want to do. So I'm going to focus on two areas: design development and construction documentation, in terms of like kind of what's coming next, what you're going to see from the next quarter, next 2 quarters. So you're probably well aware of what design development is, since you mostly are probably all architects. But again, I'll just read it out loud that the design development phase takes the floor plans, elevations, concept sketches, establishing the schematic design phase, and fine tunes the details. And at the end of this phase, the developer will have a clear understanding of how the building will look and feel. So kind of with that in mind, and kind of the intersection of this, arena of work, our idea is that, like, as you're working in Revit and potentially any future CAD application, maybe on a secondary display is kind of where you have, all the applications that we're building that will help you get to the right information at the right time. They'll help interact with Revit while you're working, but it's kind of like your, heads up display. As you're doing work on one area on one screen on Revit, this is where how we look at our playground. And so one of the things that we start with is like, okay, so as you've told us what project codes are associated with this building, we can make it a whole lot easier that in a drop down like you see here, where we can show you a quick shortcut to where those codes are. So you click on them, you can bring up the code. And then also the chapter MRU, I may be showing my age, but MRU is most recently used. So as you're traveling each of the building codes and you're spending time on any particular section, we'll have those in the shortcut list. So it's easy to kind of click on that codes library drop down and be able to go to where you were last or points of interest. So something pretty simple for us to capture once we start watching you work and once we understand what your project is based on code-wise. Then I think where we can really start taking off is to think that, okay, so, I've got an inventory of everything that Revit does. And then what we can start to think about is like, okay, so how do we, and when do we, and when does it make most sense? Because we need context, right? You just can't click buttons and have it go to content. It's like, okay, so you are doing a curtain wall. And we know the location of your, the site location of your building. We know the jurisdiction. We know what the applicable codes are. We know what the building type is. We are starting to think about, okay, so once you're doing something in Revit, how do we provide the right context, the right material to you while you're doing that? And so I don't want to call out Microsoft's Clippy, but I'll say it's something akin to that, where, again, we can get smarter and smarter over time as you're doing things in Revit, and even things that may be repetitive in Revit. We've seen this before, and last time you did this, you went here and you looked up this code. We can be a whole lot smarter about how we serve up content in real time to you while you're starting to work in Revit. And so, step one is more of us trying to create a taxonomy that says, if you do this in Revit, then, we filter through all the content in your project information, and then we show you the right sections of the code. That would be step one. But what's really interesting to us is that this is really ripe for some sort of AI layer on top of it, meaning that, again, back to kind of like understanding what you're doing, the context, like we don't know why you pressed the button, but we can get there using some of the latest and greatest AI technology that says, okay, we kind of understand the context of what this person's doing. Now this code content really makes sense for that, because we've seen it before. We've seen, others have done it like this too, and they looked at this particular code. So again, we're looking to kind of layer on some AI technology that will actually get us to this solution a lot faster than kind of doing it the old school way, which is kind of like, if this, then that, if then this, that. So anyway, that's a bit of kind of what we're thinking here in terms of kind of just getting the content to you at the right time. And then you can start to see how this would elaborate itself in Revit, that once you start to do something in Revit, again, we can serve up the right content to you. And again, this would be different if you were a different user, because again, the idea here is that even though you know, you got the project information associated with the Revit file, and any other user who uses that Revit file will see the same project information. Your behavioral model is different from the next person, the structural engineer or the MEP person, right? And so again, as we kind of understand what you're trying to do and what you're building, we can actually start to think about, well, based upon, you know, your personal preferences of how you behave and what you look for, these dialog boxes will all be different based upon the user. And that's really what the AI component gives us, is that, oh, you know, you like extra ketchup on your burger, right? And this person only doesn't like onions. Same kind of philosophy here, even though I just oversimplified it. And then also what we can do as well is, as we kind of you think about the scaffolding, we're kind of building this thing out, is that as we understand more of what you're interested in working on, we can actually start to create new documents off the codes that are like Reader's Digest versions, right? The stuff that you utilize the most, that you spend the most time on, you know, you bookmark or note, can all be kind of summarized in another type of document that is kind of like your specific, document of interest for this project. And then taking it one more step further is that from that information that's unique to your business, we can actually create project-specific checklists. So again, based on how you're working, watching what you're doing, you know, things that you're most interested in, these kind of things, this is what technology is great about, is that we can actually harness what you've done and actually turn it into something really useful for your next project. And so again, that's kind of how we layer this whole thing on, is we understand the project, and now we can start to provide some content to you based on that project, and based upon your behavior and how you build things, we can be smarter about the content. So again, it's one layer after another of kind of getting to the point where it's really simple to get to the right code, get an interpretation of the code if you need it, and get going with your project. So that's kind of the world of the early phases of design, and kind of what we're thinking of for the remainder of this year and how we deliver things. If I focus in on the next topic, which is construction documentation, again, I'll just read this out loud, but I'm sure we've all lived this life for many, many years. But in the construction documentation phase, technical information is added to the drawings to serve as instructions for how to build the project. The plans are then submitted to the local building department for code compliance review, and these drawings are also submitted to general contractors to secure final construction bids. All right, 101 is construction docs 101 is over. So in this space, again, just thinking about how to make everybody's life easier, and this came in from a customer a while ago, is a great suggestion, is that when you go and print these documents out in PDF format and you send them off to others, it would be great to have links where you ever have a note when you're documenting and you have a detail that you're making a note about, to hyperlink off to the actual code section. And so in this case, what you're seeing on the left-hand side is, in our user experience, there'd be a link section. You'd be able to insert links directly to the code library and to the section that matters to the detail you're describing. And then you'd have a laundry list underneath that where you can actually go to those sheets where the links are at any moment in time to actually change them, delete them, whatever. And then what's really cool, I'm showing my geeky phase. What's really cool is that when things get updated, then we can actually show you that, oh, but did you know that this exception 3 in section 706.5 has recently been updated? So you can make an effort to do something about it, either leave it alone or make a decision on the method to change it. But again, pretty straightforward stuff that we can do, again, for helping with documentation. And also, on our site, you've seen something that we've been advertising around ClearCalcs, which has been a structural engineering calculator system that we've been employing on our page here. Again, because we know what the building looks like. We have all the information inside Revit. This is a space where we can then say, based upon all what you've described on your project, and the building codes associated with it, we can actually come up with the allowable area, occupancy, plumbing calculations that, again, you can copy and paste onto your, your cover page for your Revit document set. So this, again, based on just those few things you type in the project info, this kind of stuff really starts to accelerate in terms of how easy is it for us to put it into a feature set. And this is kind of simple and probably not completely relevant to the codes world, but because we have your address, we can also create a vicinity map that you can just drag and drop, and it will stay up to date based on the project information. So again, one of those kind of like extra secret sauce, extra candy in your Halloween bag that we got it. We can easily kind of put that in there and make it a useful feature without spending a lot of time on it. So then, lastly, as I start to summarize, so all these things that we're building, yes, it's an add-in inside of Revit, but what we've really created are a bunch of apps that Revit launches that it is pretty straightforward for us then to say, okay, once we've gotten involved deeply in Revit, what else other applications could we start to support with these apps? And so I've got just a sketch. This is not a promise, but the idea is that based on how we've engineered this app, it's not a stretch for us to actually start to support Rhino, SketchUp, even AutoCAD, if that makes sense, and any number of other applications out there. Because what we're trying to do is I go back to that one screen where I had the dual monitors. You have your app of choice. And then on the right side, you have this command center of things that are helping you get get an understanding of the codes, so that you can again make sure your building is code compliant at that particular time of need, and you can move on doing other work. So I would say, while we don't have any sort of plans this year yet, we are seriously exploring how we go forward next on the most interesting app that's out there after Revit, right? And so anyway, just saying that more to come back to when I said Revit, there was no Revit LT support. That could come, but it's not like on our roadmap right now. I'll say that again, this is on my roadmap for product support, but we are pretty close to making a decision on this. So stay tuned on that. So to finish, before we get into questions, or more questions. So Jane, just going back to useful links. So again, you can go get the Revit update 3 today and on these 2 different locations, whether it's on the ICC download page or the Autodesk App Store. If you have any feedback on anything you've seen here today or a wish list, or you want to be part of our customer council on Revit, you email me at the following address. That's my email address for this project. So I'll get it. I can respond to you. There's more helpful videos from the ICC on our YouTube playlist page. But so anyway, again, I appreciate everybody's time today. I know that we all have billable hours to do, and this is like something that takes away from that. But I really appreciate the time, and I guess there's a bit of a fire hose, but I would say that if there's any sort of questions you have that as this meeting comes to a conclusion, feel free to email me, and I'm happy to engage with you and even show you things if need be outside of this webinar. So anyway, Phil, I think I'm done with the fire hose. Maybe we want to open the door to questions.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. For the next 5 minutes while we're addressing the last few questions, that I'm going to ask Eric, please feel free to post more in chat if there is something that you do want to ask verbally, because it's maybe intricate. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll take the mic off. So I know if you pause, Derek, you see blue beams scrolling across all the chat now. So go ahead and address that.
Yeah, so that is we've heard the rallying cry around Bluebeam, and that is certainly on our list. If I were to say like if I absolutely would support beyond Revit, it's in our top 3. So stay tuned on that. But yes, totally support. Very interested in Bluebeam for sure.
Yep, no, that was what most of the rest of the questions here. We will keep this short. Is there any questions that someone would like to raise their hand and have the mic off for? So I switch screens to see if someone's doing that or not. What versions of Revit just popped up too there?
So we support currently Revit 2022, 23, and 24, and we will be supporting Revit 2025 in the month of May.
All right, I do not see any hands up. So what we will do is, let me check chat one last time here. Got too many things open. Now I'm seeing myself being transcribed. I'm not sure what I'm opening up here. So I will stop recording right here. And